Welcome back to Inspired or Acquired. This is the podcast where we interview real owners, talk real numbers, and ask them whether or not they would sell their business. So today we're joined by a pretty amazing guest. Nathan Lindley is in north of Dallas, Texas, and he is the owner of Dunray. So they're a HVAC group, and we're going to hear more about his story. And I'm joined as always by my co-host Clint Fiore from Dealonomy, our mergers and acquisition specialist. And I'm your other co-host, Patrick Dichter from Apple Tree. So Nathan, how are you, man? It's good to see you.
Yeah, you guys too. I'm excited. This is fun.
Yeah. So for folks who don't know your story, tell us about your company and, what you guys do and what you have going on.
Yeah. So we're a residential HVAC roll-up in Dallas and Austin. So we've got kind of two divisions going right now. We are looking to expand interstate at the moment. Got a couple LOIs out there. We'll see if they stick or not. But yeah, we're specializing in buying out small mom and pop residential HVAC businesses and then professionalizing them, doing a lot of sales training and trying to generate some upside out of it.
Okay. Nice. And how long have we been in the industry?
A few years. We closed our first deal in February of 2020, which was an excellent time for getting into intervention.
Crazy timing.
Yeah, it was fun, man.
That's wild.
And how many acquisitions have you done to date?
We've done 9 so far. We did actually about 4 in the last 12 months. So it's been a good year for us.
That's wild.
Yeah.
So when you say small acquisitions, like how small are we talking? Like what's kind of been the range of deal sizes you've been doing?
Nothing. Our biggest one was $3 million, and that was the only one. And there was $3 million revenue, and that was the only one that was that big. Everything else has been under $1.5 million of revenue.
You consolidated the branding now?
Yeah, we started out with distinct branding for Austin and Dallas, but that was just really difficult to work with. It was more had to do with the constraints of our software and sending out distinct communications with different branding to different segments of our audience. And so kind of for that reason, we consolidated the branding here just this year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Yeah. Most of the companies we buy, because they're so small, there's not like a ton of brand value. So it's like, hey, John's AC is now done right. Like no one really cares.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'd love to get a picture. We like to just jump right into kind of like the economics, the dollars and cents here. Then we'll go into, you have a really fascinating story. I've read a little bit about it on X. I want to unpack some of the mistakes and missteps, because I'm sure you've got plenty of fun ones to share. But where you're at today, just long story short, you had some stumbles out of the gate.
Yeah.
You've finally cracked the code on some of this stuff, and now you went from losing money to making money.
Mm-hmm.
And your combined revenue today is what?
Year to date, where we just hit $6 million yesterday.
Okay. And so you're predicting over 8 million for this year. Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
And EBITDA, you had said, was 1.6 year to date. Is that
1.2 year to date? But I think we can crack 2 million for the year.
Okay.
Yeah.
So for those listening, like he's executing a strategy that I really respect. It's kind of doing deals well under the radar of institutional buyers and private equity that they would not touch with a 10-foot pole, and putting them together into a company that could then be a potential private equity target one day if he so chooses to go that route, by consolidating them, modernizing them, standardizing them a bit, and then achieving some scale by smushing together these little acquisitions into a bigger company. And I would call that like a level up strategy, where you can buy at, the lower multiple ranges of Main Street and then get potentially a middle market deal put together. And within just a few short years' time, what Nathan has done is created a company that I've said, when you hit that 2 million of EBITDA, you kind of get to another, I think there's like kind of 3 tiers where you really start to level up in your multiples that acquirers will pay, especially in the residential HVAC trades. I think 1 million EBITDA is a huge milestone.
Yeah.
2 million EBITDA is another huge milestone. And then 5 million would probably be the next big milestone.
Yeah.
And I think you get kind of bigger multiples at each of those levels. There's ever deeper pockets competing for ever less deals as you climb that deal ladder, if you will.
Right.
And so, yeah, 5 million used to be where private equity would say that's kind of our minimum for a platform deal. But now I feel like they're reaching down into the 2 million, 1 million EBITDA deals. And so, like, if you were to go on the market today, I think you'd have all kinds of interest from private equity, from institutional buyers, as well as searchers and all kinds of different, like, I love that deal size because it's like you never know who's going to be the best buyer at that 1-2
Right.
million EBITDA
Right.
range. But all that to say, I mean, you're buying businesses. I think you probably have a pretty good handle on valuation. But I'm guessing your combined business right now is pushing you're probably pushing about a $10 million valuation is my guess.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing you don't have that much into the business because you've probably been buying at lower multiples. So let's just, for those listening, like, this is not an exact science. We're just doing back of the napkin valuation here. So if we were to package them up and take them to market, we'd get into a lot more detail. But just from the little bit I know about what he's told me so far, and just doing lots of deals in the HVAC space, I think it's probably like 8 to 12 million is a ballpark range. And so let's, for easy numbers, let's just say he's got a $10 million company. So with that, does that surprise you, or is that kind of like in the ballpark where you think
You're approximately what I was expecting. Yeah.
Okay.
Totally.
That doesn't surprise me that you're thinking straight on that, because you're a roll up. You know what you're doing. Like,
Right. Right.
But tell me about the economics here. So, like, who owns your company? Like, how many partners do you have? What's the cap table look like, and what does your debt look like?
Yeah. So I am 46% owner in our company. My dad came on to acquire one of our target companies, all cash. He basically invested his entire retirement into this deal. And so he's 37.5% or something like that. And then my longtime friend, who we'll talk about in a little while, put $100,000 in for 15% early on when we were just fighting to stay alive. And then I have we'll loosely call a technical partner who has a 2% interest, which is kind of part of the story there. So,
okay. And so you've got these 4 owners, and you're the biggest, and your dad's right behind you.
yeah.
And you got a good friend in there. So these are all people that are personal, deep, loving connections in your life. And that makes it even that much more stressful when it's dad's life savings, and it's a lot riding on it here.
Yeah.
So I have to kind of dive into. I didn't get the answer to, like, how much debt do you currently have on this system right now?
$2.5 million all in. That's between seller's notes and SBA, and then a bunch of like vehicle payments. So we've really bulked up our fleet this year. About like $400,000 in new trucks. So all in, I think about 2.5.
Okay.
Hey guys, want to take a quick break from the show to thank one of our sponsors and tell you all about them. So Eversight is the company and our sponsor. They were actually a guest on the podcast, and they're somebody that I've used for digital marketing. A couple of things that I love about Eversight. Normally, if you go to design a website and have somebody really do it well, they're going to charge a big 10 to 20K upfront fee, and then you'll get charged hourly anytime there's updates. So Eversight totally flipped the model. They do a monthly subscription that covers great designs and unlimited updates. I use them for my website, and then they can also help with SEO, AdWords, and all your ongoing content needs. They're a great team. They're responsive. I believe in them. I know them. They're a guest on the podcast, so we don't take sponsorship lightly, and I'm a big fan. So I would definitely encourage you to check them out if you've been thinking about beefing up your digital marketing or possibly doing a new website. You can go to eversight.com/inspired and tell them that you found them on the podcast. And back to the show.
Without getting too personal or deep, or I don't want to be too nosy, but I just want to, like, for the listener's sake.
Yeah.
Were you guys already rich going into this thing? I mean, you said your dad put like his life
No.
savings into a piece
So,
of this.
so first of all, I'm a completely open book. And part of the reason for that is because I feel like so much of the stuff that now I was consuming when I was starting out was all about how rich I am and all this kind of stuff. But when you're not in that spot, that's not super helpful. You want to know, how did that guy get through his suffering? So I emphasize the suffering just so that the listener knows if you are struggling right now, that's part of it. And so, I'm completely transparent about basically everything in the company. So, so do you want me just to kind of tell you how we got to here? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, when we very first got married 10 years ago, my wife did the most amazing thing. She let us buy a 4-unit rental property that we lived in a unit and rented out the other 3. The term for that is house hacking. And it was, if you've got the tolerance for living in a property that's maybe less nice than you would otherwise go for, I highly recommend. We put like $14,000 down on this place, rented out the 3 units, completely covered the mortgage. And we lived there for free for the first 2 years of our marriage. When we started to have a family, we rented out that other unit, we bought a house, and the cash flow from that property paid for more of our mortgage payment than our tenants were paying in rent. So we were still out of pocket less than our tenants were in rent. And we bought that in 2013, which was a great time to be buying real estate. We were just kind of coming out of the 2008 hit. And so that property did extremely well over about a 4-year span. At that time, I was running a Christian book publishing company with my dad. My dad had been a vocational minister my entire life. And so we had a large network in churches. And so that was my job, but I've made way more money off of the principal growth of this property, the equity growth of this property, than I did at my job. And so, after about 15 years of running our publishing company, it never scaled the way we had envisioned, and we were both kind of burnt out. We'd run it for 15 years. And so we decided to shut that down. And at this point, I had about $400,000 of equity in that rental property. And we were living in Portland, Oregon at the time. I had never enjoyed the Pacific Northwest. It was gray and I never enjoyed it. So I was kind of looking for my exit opportunity. And my daughter was about to go into kindergarten. And so we decided if we were going to ever leave the Pacific Northwest, it kind of needed to be now. And so one of the things that I learned from this book publishing experience was I was acutely aware that no matter how great our books were, they were a discretionary purchase. You never had to have the thing. I noticed no matter how poor I was, I always found the money for certain purchases or certain things that just needed to be paid for, right? And so when we were shutting down the company, I knew I wanted to try this thing of, I heard about you could buy a business. And we had started the publishing thing from scratch, and literally took us 10 years to hit $1 million in revenue. It was just this absolute slog. I don't want to go through that again. I'm just riveted by this concept that you could buy a company and the very next day the phone's ringing. That was just sounded like magic to me. So I really wanted to try it, but I wanted to be in a space where my mental experiment was, if I lost my job today, I would call my dad to borrow the money to pay this expense. And so I was thinking through like what expenses, what businesses fit that category, something like roofing, if I had a leak in my roof, or things like that. So long story short, HVAC was on that list. And because my dad had been a minister for so long, he had this really wide network of friends. And he had a friend down in Central Texas who had been in HVAC for 20 plus years. So I connected with this guy. I said, hey, I'm thinking about buying an HVAC business. Would you consult for me in exchange for equity? And so he agreed. And so my family, we all moved down from Portland to the Dallas area, and we closed on our first transaction in February of 2020, and started trying to learn the business. And I would come to my technical partner, I guess you call them, with questions about like KPIs, like how many calls a day should our techs be running? What should be like the average transaction value? And he's like, oh man, I don't know. I mean, like, sort of 3 and 10 calls a day. I'm like, that's a pretty big range, buddy. Like, I'm trying to kind of like establish a baseline, but then also I'm in a new market. I'm not familiar with anything about Dallas. I don't know what normal weather in March in Dallas is. 70 degrees normal. Is that cool? Is that hot? No idea. The phone's not ringing. Is that normal? Or did I just, inadvertently, chase away a bunch of customers for something I didn't know I did. So, and then you got COVID layered on top of that. So if the phone's not ringing, is that COVID? Are people freaked out that, to have us in their home? So there's just so much unknown, and establishing a baseline is knowing what normal is supposed to look like was super, super tough, because there's all these variables that are just kind of being thrown at you all at the same time. And then on top of that, my buddy that I brought on as my consulting partner, not really having a lot of input. I don't think these were questions he had ever asked himself. I found out later he's a brilliant mechanic and can fix any air conditioner. But as far as running a business, I found out later his business had never done as well as I had hoped. And so that was my fault. I think it was the right playbook, but maybe poorly executed. So, so we did that first deal in 2020. The numbers didn't look terrible initially. They were great, but they were awful. And so I called my dad up and I said, hey, there's this other deal down in Austin. It looks like an awesome opportunity. You want to go in with me on this? So he cashed in all of his retirement. We bought the second deal down in Austin. And that's when all the mistakes that we were making scaled. And when you scale your mistakes, they become really apparent really quickly. Yeah. And when the blood loss started happening in volume. And so we had this issue where there was no correlation between our payroll and our revenue. It was like, it would have a $35,000 payroll for the week and we'd have $10,000 of revenue. Or we'd have a $35,000 payroll for the week and we have $50,000 of revenue. And so, when I'm sitting down, I'm trying to kind of, nail Jello to the wall. It's like, I could not figure out a cost of goods at all. And that made no sense. I'm sitting down in Excel and I'm trying to wrap my brain around how to build a business model. What do I need to do to succeed? I have no freaking idea, because I sent a guy to our home and I'm paying him $200 in payroll, and he might walk out the door with a $30,000 check, or he might walk out the door empty-handed. Like, what do I do with that? And so, so that was the first, basically, almost 3 years of running the company was kind of going through all of that. So we did eventually figure out some solutions. I don't know if you care about getting into the specifics or not, or just the rest of the journey, but
yeah. Did you have a coach, or did you have a best practices group, or like, how did you start to fix that?
So, okay. So what was going on with the payroll thing? I'd go to the technicians and I'd explain the problems. Yeah, I'm paying you hourly, but what I get back is like rolling the dice every day. I mean, it's like literally getting up out of bed and playing roulette, Russian roulette actually. And so I was trying to explain to them the importance of, generating revenue, and it didn't seem to resonate with them. And so I toyed with the idea of just going straight commission, and like, hey, I will pay you a percentage of whatever you bring in. And all the techs poo-pooed that, said you'll never get someone to work for you under those terms. And eventually it was March 1st of 2022. I came into the office and I said, guys, I'm out of money. I just wrote you my last payroll. I can't make payroll next week because there was like $2,000 in the bank and payroll had been like 20. And so we're done unless you will go straight commission with me. And they all quit. And so I'd essentially burned 2 businesses to the ground. My original location in Dallas and my one down in Austin. And but I had happened to literally 48 hours before have had a guy respond to an Indeed ad that I had up saying, and he said, actually, your hourly rate is fine, but I would actually really prefer to work on straight commission because I've done that before at other businesses and I actually made a lot more money that way. So I said, dude, I guess as soon as those words left his mouth, I don't care, you're hired. Because I was so desperate to try this idea and no one else would play ball with me.
Yeah.
Well, he went out there and started running calls and starting out as an individual, out earning all of my other team combined. So all the guys that took off, he was earning more revenue than the other 5 of them were earning collectively, and making tremendous money for himself in the process. And so, but what was more important than that to me was that it gave me a concrete gross profit margin that I could actually calculate. And I could say, if this guy goes out and he earns $5,000, my gross profit will be this. And the other thing that it does is it aligns incentives so that you actually care about the outcome of your day. Whereas these guys, they'd be smoking cigarettes down at the park, on the clock. And there's nothing I could do to get them to care because the only thing that they would care, there's no motivation for them to give a rip. So that was the day one of the turnaround for us. And then there were tons of additional layers that we peeled back as we, kind of got our arms wrapped around like how much we should be charging for this or that service. Realizing that we're seriously undercharging for things only because that's what we were told to charge. I had some technician who had a strong opinion say, no, you can't charge more than $1,500 for this service, only to find out that the private equity backed company down the street was charging $4,500 for that service. And so, as we kind of started to get our arms wrapped around what our gross profit really had to be in order just to stay alive. Like if we're under 50% GP, we're in trouble. And we really want to be at 55, and so, that took some kind of iterating on, compensation strategies, and pricing models and different incentives and things like that. But, little by little, we started kind of like going from a 35% gross profit to 45% and then 46 and 47. Early on the gains were pretty fast, but we've always kind of chipped away at that next point until we're, most months we're 50%, somewhere in the 50 to 55 range, or about 52 on average. So,
man, that's wild. What a watershed moment to try to pitch them all in straight commission. You lose them all, and then you have one guy that you're building around. But now
and it was in the middle of that whole bloodbath that I brought on my friend from Oregon. He had invested, so it was $100,000 that he invested, and that was his wife's inheritance from her grandfather. And so that was like at the end of it was about 6 months into year 2. And it took me about 6 months to burn through that $100,000. And so now I was out of money for the second time. That was when I said, hey guys, I'm out of options here. We have to go straight commission. And that was after I had lost my dad's retirement and my best friend's inheritance from his wife's grandfather. So
that's
a lot of pressure to figure out.
Everybody goes through that J curve in an acquisition of just like, it's getting worse. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm going to go bankrupt, and then they turn it around and get the momentum. Most of the time, some people, the J curve takes 6 months or 18 months, but for you, a long J curve.
Yeah. Nathan, how much of your cash from your like property did you, from your life savings or whatever, did you put in to these deals?
So I only put my own cash in the very first deal. Let's say it was like 120,000. So we had 400,000 of equity in that property.
Mm-hmm.
After taxes, it was like 335 or something like that. And so we came down, we wrote the check for the first deal. We had about $250,000 in the bank, but we kind of chewed through that $250,000, backstopping the company, paying for personal expenses, buying my mother-in-law down for visits and things like that. We kind of burned through that $250,000 over a period of time. So, so everything else that we invested was either from my dad or my buddy. And it's been reinvested earnings.
Hey guys, we want to take a quick break from the show just to tell you about our companies that make this happen. My name is Patrick Dichter and I own Appletree Business Services. We do accounting and tax nationwide. So if you own a small to medium-sized business, we'd love to help. And we can also do financial due diligence for any acquisitions. You can check us out at appletreebusiness.com.
And speaking of acquisitions, this is Clint, your co-host. My company is called Dealonomy. You can find us at dealonomy.com. We are on a mission to just make it 10 times easier to buy or sell a small business. If you're a buyer, you probably feel like finding a good business to buy is like searching for a needle in a haystack. We have created the Needle Store where you can just go find a great business that's turnkey, ready to purchase with banks ready to lend on it. Go find you a good one. Go buy it at dealonomy.com. And if you're a seller, we're the only place you can sell your business for no commission with a fast, free, guaranteed result. And so it's very innovative, easy button for buying or selling a business. Hope you join us at dealonomy.com.
All right. Thanks for supporting us. Now back to the show.
Okay. So let me do this back of the napkin math, and I'm going to like dig in further to our original question here, which is
Yeah.
the sell versus not sell conundrum or question.
Yeah.
So I've been listening intently here. 10 million or so valuation. We're just going to call it that. 2.5 million debt. That means 7.5 of equity in your business. You own 40 something percent. Your dad owns 30 something percent. Your friend owns 15%. So, I mean, your initial 100 to 250K, depending on how we look at it.
Yeah.
You could sell and turn that into 3-4 million bucks. Your dad, who you lost his life savings and then snatched it from the flames of the fire with your friends bailing you out and turning the corner on this commission deal. The 150 he put in, right?
Yeah.
Like that could, I mean, you could slide your dad a return on his investment today of a couple million bucks and put him, and I'm assuming that would be life-changing and meaningful for him. Your friend, their inheritance from their wife's grandfather came in and you nearly lit that on fire. You could probably slide them a 7-figure check over $1 million if you were to sell this business, even after you pay off the SBA debt and the vehicles and everything else.
Right.
Is that tempting to say, let's take some chips off? Let's secure the bag. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And early on, when we were very first out of the fire, it was, okay, now that we have something to sell, let's get the heck out of here. And that was absolutely the temptation. But thankfully, the conversations that we had at that time when I was kind of thinking down that path were just not very tempting offers. Like, I did talk to one equity fund, we threw out something between 4 and 5. It just, there wasn't going to be enough in it for anyone to really justify all the pain that we'd gone through.
Yeah.
So yeah, the answer is no. We wouldn't sell right now, but it is wholly tempting. Just to de-risk it completely. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's got to feel great to return the money, especially those people you deeply care about that believed in you when you were, and even when you were struggling, that pushed in with you.
Yes.
You got to be tempted to secure the bag, at least for them, and so
100%.
So like, what makes you say no? Like, what makes you say no? Even at 10, I said no to 4 or 5, but even at 10, an 8-figure deal, I'm still going to pass
First of all, because my shareholders have said no. That my dad and my buddy both have a lot of conviction about what we've established and what we're doing. And what we've talked about is that I feel like we have largely de-risked what we're doing. We have a very solid playbook in place. We're at about 1 turn of debt to debt to EBITDA, which is, I think, a pretty healthy place to be. Mm-hmm. And we have gotten the sweet, sweet taste of cash flow in our mouth. And it's an addicting drug.
A whole new world.
It is, man. It is. And so, my dad is making enough money passively that as long as I don't screw anything up too badly, he will have, a healthy retirement in perpetuity. And so, again, as long as I don't light this empire twice, which don't put it past me. But, and then the other thing that we've talked through is a liquidity event would actually create a problem, because I know this industry now. And I know all of the value generating levers that I can pull. So when I'm looking at an acquisition, I'm looking for very specific criteria, because there are certain levers that we've gotten very good at pulling where I'm buying companies at 3x of their current performance, but after our adjustments, it really comes down closer to 1x, because we just are really good at doing specific things. And so if I were to let go of that, I get, say, $3 million after taxes, let's say. Now, what do I do with $3 million to go replace the income that I just lost?
Right.
Well, so that creates a new problem, because now I got to go invest in an industry that I don't know as well, which has, so I've seriously upped my risk. And also the returns on our acquisitions are pretty tremendous. So where am I going to go to get even similar returns without massively jacking up the risk factor? So that's kind of my reasoning for saying we're just going to stick with this for a while. Not to say that I wouldn't take some of my cash flow and go buy an apartment complex with it, just, to start diversifying. But ultimately, I don't know what I would do with $3 million that would be nearly as good as what we're currently doing.
Yeah, I mean, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, even with, all the uncertainty in the world right now, interest rates and tariffs and, inflation, all these different things, like what you said in the very beginning, I think rings really true. As a fellow Texan, if my air conditioner goes out, I am paying whatever. I'm going to figure out how to get it fixed.
Right, exactly.
And I'm not fixing it myself. I'm going to call somebody and get it.
100%.
And so, I love owning businesses in these, necessity areas, because I feel like no matter what the world throws at you, as long as you do good work, and take care of people, take care of your team, take care of your customers, you can somewhat surf on the waves of the world throws at you with supply chain disruptions and inflation and this and that. You can adjust your prices, you can adjust your strategy and zig and zag, and still people got to get their AC fixed.
Right.
So yeah, if you kind of feel like you're confident in that, and that you're willing to kind of, you've still got the energy and the vitality to make those adjustments as the world throws them at you, then it seems very logical that you're going to stay the course and continue on here. So take me into the future. So like, where do you think you're headed in the next, say, 5-10 years? Is there a goal? Is there a point where you say, you know what, right now it makes all the sense in the world to keep doing acquisitions, but once I hit this number, then I think that we're talking, because you could cross that other threshold. You could get up into that 5 million EBITDA potentially at the way you're going and growing by acquisition and organically, and now you've got an even bigger multiple on it, and now you're talking tens of millions instead of 10 million. You might be being able to walk away, you and your dad, with kind of like set for life kind of money if you execute really well. Would there be a point where you say that math changes for you, and at this point I would sell? Like, have you thought through into the future like that?
Tons. Yeah. And where I keep coming back to is that I don't think it will ever make sense to sell. I'm not saying, I guess the caveat to that would be if another opportunity presented itself where I was going to need the capital, and then that opportunity had better potential than what I'm currently. Because like you said, we're shopping way under the radar of what private equity looks at. So I'm not competing against Apex Group or Wrench Group or, all these other guys who with, $1 billion of AUM. They don't care about the companies that I'm buying. I'm paying $700,000 for my deals.
Mm-hmm.
And there are like 70,000 of those. So, I can basically grow as big as I ever want to get. And I can, for all intents and purposes, be kind of like infinitely wealthy. And the amount of cash flow that you're generating off of that, it would be incredibly difficult to replicate in an apartment complex portfolio. I'm not saying it could, maybe I'd have to quantify what that would have to be to achieve. But the other thing is, when we have the playbook, I can put a CEO in place and I can say, this playbook, go implement this. We're shopping businesses that look like this. We're managing our cash this way. This is our org chart. Go replicate it 10 more times. And then I can go drink Mai Tais on the beach and continue to grow the company. And the amount of cash flow will be tremendous. So, if we're at 5 million of EBITDA, and let's say we have 1 turn of debt on the company, which is kind of what we're trying to keep around. I mean, off the top of my head, I don't know what that cash flow number is going to be, but it's going to be major. I'll be making over $1 million a year of cash flow off of that.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah. But I mean, if you sell that company for 50 million, you might be able to say, you know what, I can make 20 years of income in one today,
Yeah.
and or whatever it
Yeah.
turns out to be.
Yeah.
And that can be, that can become tempting. And so I appreciate that. It's kind of like, it sounds like you're a builder at heart. You're going to be doing something.
Right.
And it's like right now, I mean, what are you, late 30s or like what 41?
Yeah.
Oh man, you're really old. Okay. I'm just kidding. I'm 42. I'm 1 year ahead of you. So I mean, you got 3 kids, you
Yeah.
got a family, you've got partners that you love that are in this on this journey with you. So it sounds like you're inspired. That's the name of our show, Inspired or Acquired.
Right.
And I think it's safe to say this is what an inspired entrepreneur looks like. He's found something that he survived through several close calls, running out of cash and bleeding out, but didn't give up, kept his feet to the fire, refused to lose his family's and friends' money and his equity he'd built up from house hacking, and just hung in there until he cracked the code and figured it out. And now that he's just inspired to stay on this ride until something else better makes sense, but he just can't imagine what that would be at the moment. Is that fair to
That's exactly
assessment?
right. Exactly.
Okay.
Right.
Super cool story, man. When I think about like the future of your acquisitions here, and this may be even a chance to plug yourself and what you're doing.
Sure.
Are you going to stick to Dallas and Austin? Are you going to stick to HVAC? Or are you going to look at plumbing and electrical? Are you going to look at other cities? Or like, talk to me as a broker. What could I bring you that I could sell you, or any of our listeners that might be in one of these spaces? Like what is in your buy box today and in the future?
So we are looking at expansion. I'm going to write an offer today on an opportunity in Tennessee, and we've got an offer out there for one in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. And I've got managers that are ready to deploy to those 2 markets should we close on this deal. But so one of the things that I was talking about, we look for certain criteria because we've got levers that we can pull. And one of the things that I look for, so for me, acquisition is a replacement for marketing. What I'm doing when I buy a company is I am buying those phone calls that come in, and I'm buying the customer base. And so most about businesses are valued off of their profit, as you know, but for me, that's kind of an irrelevant metric, because the profit is the end result of all of the decisions that owner made, from the marketing that they did or didn't do, the pricing that they implemented, the sales trimming that they had, what their overhead costs are like. All of those decisions are all things that are now under my control. Mm-hmm. And to value it based off of their profitability, to me, is kind of nonsense in a way. Mm-hmm. So after like our 3rd or 4th deal, because you start to notice that some deals make you a ton of money and others not as much. And so I was trying to kind of tease it out. And what I figured out we're doing is we are buying the organic inbound calls. And what I have found is that it's actually cheaper to buy the whole company than it would be to go out and do the marketing that it would take to build that company. So like if an apartment complex down the street is selling for $200 a foot, and it would cost you $230 to build that single apartment complex, you're cheaper off just buying the one down the street than going out and building. And that's essentially what we're doing. It costs more to build these companies through traditional marketing efforts than that company was worth on the back end.
So what does that look like in diligence? Are you like, can I see how many maintenance plans you have, or like, can I see your call volume, or like, how do you suss that up?
Call volume. I ask them what their call volume is, and then I give a secondary layer of value for the total size of their database. And so if they've got 5,000 customers in their database and they saw 1,500 of them last year, I'm going to ascribe their value to the 1,500 people that they saw, and then a secondary and far lesser value to the 3,500 that they didn't see. And what we do is we have a team of CSRs who outbound call to those 3,500 others and say, hey, we're new owners in town. We'd love to give you a free maintenance on the house just to say thank you for being a loyal customer. And then we send our new well-trained techs in to razzle dazzle them with an amazing experience. And we'll even like give them a year of maintenance on, just to kind of get them to stick with us. And when we do that, we see our customer activation rate shoot up. And also we typically charge a little bit more than some of the mom and pops do because we're really focused on gross profit targets, and a few other keys like that. So when I'm looking at companies, I'm valuing it off of the call volume, not off of the EBITDA. And sometimes that works. That gives me coverage to offer more for companies. Sometimes I would never pay what somebody else would pay because the EBITDA is, say, really high, and so somebody else would pay a lot more for that company than I do.
That's super interesting.
Yeah.
I'd like to make a point here, or Patrick, like to me, what you just heard, that little mini rant, was the difference of just a little bit of experience. What a difference night and day to a brand new buyer that hasn't been in the game, because everyone that's new is so focused on that bottom line and what multiple am I going to pay of SDE or what multiple of EBITDA.
Right.
But when I get around a savvy industry buyer that's bought a whole lot of deals in the industry, they all have the exact same tone that Nathan just took right there. It's not about, they don't even really care what the other person was making. They know what they're going to make with what they're buying. And so they know what they're buying.
Yes.
I gave an example, I think maybe on another show, but like, I'll never forget when I talked to, like, I had a restaurant I was trying to sell. I don't do a lot of restaurant deals. They're just a pain in the butt. They're hard to sell. They're the one business that when I talk to 10 buyers and I say, is there any type of business you don't want me to show you? They're saying, yeah, I'll look at anything but restaurants. Like, that's very common as an answer. But sure enough, I got a restaurant deal that I liked and I was marketing it. And let's say it was like 200,000 or 300,000 of SDE. And, everyone else is hemming and hawing about the valuation and the multiple, but an experienced restaurateur that owned about a dozen restaurants called. And what he said, I started to explain the SDE and blah, 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 like I do with everyone else. And he's like, I don't believe any of that stuff. I can't spell SDE. I don't know what you're talking about here, kid. Like, I don't believe, like, if you know anything about restaurants, you can't believe the numbers. They're probably paying people cash out the back door. Right. You don't know if they're buying their groceries on the food costs for their family and their friends. Like, you can't trust these numbers. And he's like, I'll tell you what I do. I just want to see the credit card receipts. I'm going to pay a percentage of those. And I want to see the traffic count in front of the store. And it's like, he just knows if I got this much traffic and this much revenue, I know what I'm going to make in a restaurant that I manage my way, because I always dial in my costs the same way. I train my people the same way. And like, he was that confident. So he's just buying traffic count and credit card revenue. And that's basically his diligence. But then he's betting on himself from that point forward. He's not betting on the historical financials that he has 100%. No trust in.
100%. Yeah, exactly.
So you just heard the HVAC version of that from Nathan. And it's so fun. You only been, you were just telling us you were completely clueless 5 years ago and didn't know how to determine your costs and all this. And then here you are 5 years later with a pretty sophisticated bet on yourself with your own ways to evaluate companies that are totally different than EBITDA and SDE that you find works for you. So that's the power of having a playbook and a little experience. So I think that was very insightful, Nathan. Appreciate you sharing that with us.
Yeah, thank you.
That's brilliant. I was wondering earlier if you were going to give us some of the nuggets that you pulled post close. Couple other quick questions for you. Do you typically have a seller stay on, or do you end up, integration's messy, right? Do you end up having people stay on, or what?
Yeah, so sellers never, because they ran their company their way for 20 years, and I just don't want to have to fight with them and explain every single decision that we make that's different than the ones that they made. Yeah. And so I've never even tried. And then for the employees that we inherit, We do always extend the offer for them to stay, provided that they're willing to change how we do their job to comply with our processes. Because pretty much everything we do has a reason behind it. Very, very little of it is just kind of random and left to chance.
Yes. Got it.
Yeah.
And why not go deeper in Texas or like next door to where you are versus go to Tennessee or Florida?
Oh, I'm happy to. The reason why I'm looking at other locations is just to cast a wider net. And so if I have a platform in, Nashville or Phoenix, any other mom and pop shops that pop up in those markets, I can snag them and bolt them on and just accelerate my deal flow a little bit. That's the rationale. I also have a few employees that are kind of ready to be promoted into a management slot. And so I'm trying to kind of find room for them in that. So.
And did you ever answer, are you strict on HVAC, or are you going to look at other trades?
No, we've hired our first master electrician here 2 weeks ago, and I've got an offer out to our first master plumber, and that'll get us into all 3 trades. And then we had a fun little adventure we bought a company that was HVAC and appliance repair, which was kind of a fiasco, but we've figured out how to turn those appliance repair calls into HVAC calls. And so we kind of have that little offshoot. So, so we're eventually probably going to try and expand into everything that touches the home, because once our guys are in the home, if they see rat droppings or, whatever, or hail damage on the roof, I'd like to be able to sell them whatever we can find.
Impressive, man.
I may have some opportunities with you. If you haven't joined Delonomy yet, I have to give you a plug. I have to plug it. Love to have you on there as a buyer. We have
love to be on, man. Absolutely.
a couple plumbing deals right now, a couple roofing deals right now, and all over the place. We're also strong in Texas in your backyard, but we're doing deals all over the country. So love for you to check us out. All of our deals are bankable, realistic valuations, kind of turnkey, ready to go, and varies in size, but we do have quite a few in the smaller range that you're comfortable with.
That's awesome. Love it.
Well, this has been a really fun episode, and appreciate you sharing all that you did. If people want to connect with you online, Nathan, where's the best place for them to do that?
I'm super active on LinkedIn. Look me up under Nathan Lindley. And then, as you know, I'm on Twitter/X, and I think my handle is is _lasting legacy, which is actually my Twitter account from back when we had the publishing company. So, nice. _lasting legacy.
Cool. We'll link to that in the show notes. So appreciate it coming on, and we'll have to catch up again soon.
Hey, I appreciate it, guys. Thank you.
Thanks, Nathan.
All right. Good to see you.